Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. So great to have you here. You can see we have a lot of people on, and they're commenting in. Please do so if you're here. Say hello so we know who's here. Thank you for doing that. And in fact, Maria Balderas was our first one here today. And so I'm going to send you, Maria, I'm going to send you this green water bottle, Solle branded water bottle. Hope you enjoy that. Thanks for being on time and even early, quite early actually. Thanks for that. Now, today we are talking about one of our original products. We launched with this product. It's one of our favorites here at Solle. It's a lot of people's favorites. And it was one of the first ones that we was formulated. And we're going to learn a lot about AdaptAble today. So let's do that. Let's talk about it on why Solle works. As you can see, Greg Halliday is here with me again today, and we are so fortunate to have Greg with us. Thanks for joining us today.
Great to be here, Kendall.
You know, we're so lucky to have Greg share his knowledge and his perspectives, his strategies, how he's formulated the products, and we're just thrilled to have him. But before we get into AdaptAble, Greg, let's talk a little bit about why Solle works and what this program's about. Now, we have a motto here at Solle Naturals. It's your body, your mind, your life. And that alludes to, for me at least, that it's important for us to take care of our own health, to take responsibility for our own health. And in order to do that, you need information and knowledge. And one of the great ways to do that is to learn through video and through a format like this. And actually, Greg came to me and he wanted to take a focus on each product and talk about each product in a way that would educate people and help them understand what that product is and all the great information that is there about the product. But in Why Solle Works, we intend to talk about all the pieces of why Solle works, including we'll talk with Blake about why quality is important and potency and how we maintain that quality. We'll also talk to Dr. Allison in the future about things like mind, body, and the plant, why we use plant source, and why we use adaptogens. But for the next little while, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about each individual product, and Greg's going to be the one that's going to do that the most. I'm sure we'll talk to Allison. You can't do something like this and not talk to Allison because she's so knowledgeable and so fun to listen to. So I'm sure we'll have her on the program as well. But Greg, let's talk about AdaptAble. And you know, as we mentioned in our last show, this month we're talking about hormones. And of course, we talked about Excel, which is one of our heavy hitters for hormones. But the thing the product you might not think about is AdaptAble. And so I wanted to ask you, why did we choose AdaptAble to talk about in a month when we're talking about hormones?
Well, I think for that exact reason, Kendall, you don't always think of AdaptAble and adaptogens having an influence, a great influence on our hormone balance, but they actually do. And hopefully we can see that as we talk through this formula today. Hopefully by the time we get done, you'll go, okay, I can see why that's an important part of a month where we're focusing on hormones.
Yeah. So can you remember back 10 years when you formulated a team effort, you know, with Allison and others, formulated AdaptAble? Can you remember why you chose the certain adaptogens you did, and how you formulated that, and why you formulated that?
Well, I do. I mean, it has been really 12 years because this happened well before the launch of Soul Naturals, which was 10 years ago, a little over 10 years ago. I guess we're coming up on 11 years in June. But the memories are really fresh for me because Adaptable came about really partially from all the years of being around these amazing herbs and 20 years in another company, but also because of what we were going through as a family. We've shared our story, and in particular Donna's story, my wife Donna, and how adaptogenic herbs, we did not know them by that title at the time, but how formulas that had adaptogens in them made a huge difference for her and made it so that she could move from a point where she originally was using Zoloft to manage her stress and depression to a point where she actually slowly got off the Zoloft and speaking with her doctor as well and telling him that she was going to do this because she wanted to avoid the side effects that she was experiencing with it, and it also wasn't functioning as well. Her body was sort of pushing back on it after a little while of using it. In fact, her whole story, you can go on YouTube, and she shared quite a bit about it. There's so much to that. It's really hard to put into even a 15-minute video, which was her sharing this story on YouTube, what she experienced over years. It's hard to do that and always remember all the experiences. But she did use what we later became aware of were formulas and herbal formulas with adaptogens in them, and was using 50 or 60 capsules a day, but it was working for her. And so when we decided to found Soul, part of her request was a formula that would make it so she didn't have to take so many targeted just at this aspect of mood balance. And so Adaptable was the result, and it really was the first formula of Soul. It is contained in Soul Vital. Much of the Adaptable formula is also in Soul Vital as well. But the formula itself, you could call it Donna's formula because it is what she was able to, with 2 or 4 capsules, replace 50 or 60 on a daily basis. And that led us really down many other pathways investigating what adaptogens were, what were differences and uniquenesses among the various adaptogens, why do they work so well? And that led to us asking the question, as you know, Kendall, when we founded the company, what if adaptogens were part of each formula, regardless of where its targeted nutrition is? Would they make each one of those better? Would people experience a better result? And that was the reason we founded the company, was that hypothesis. And now we're kind of looking back 10 years saying, here's a little bit of a 10-year review on Adaptable. So tonight, hopefully, as we talk about it, you'll get that sense.
So before you get into your slides, I want to mention to our viewers today that if you have questions as Greg is speaking here, please type those in and I'll try and relay those to him and see if we can answer your questions. Or if you have comments as well, please comment in and we'll try to get those to Greg as well. So, but why don't you tell us about Adaptable?
Love to. And I want to add, as we jump into this, shout out to Dr. Allison, shout out to Blake Christensen, Kendall mentioned, both of them. The reason I'm sharing these is because I'm in the unique position of being able to hear and learn and be around each of them as we make these formulas. And so much of the team is synthesized into this, and I just get to present it because of the perspective that I'm able to have working with such amazing people. So Adaptable, as you can see now, if you're watching and if you're listening in, hopefully take some time and look at the recording so that you can see there's a lot of visual information as well this time. But I'll try to include as much of it as I can vocally. Adaptable was designed for stress management. It was designed, honestly, plainly for my wife, Donna. It is Donna's formula even today in my mind, and has made and continues to make such a great difference in many lives. Why? Because it has as its benefits more energy, better sleep, a level head, and a strong immune system. Those are 4 big qualities that I would mention. let's see, if I want to advance these, I can either way. Okay. There are 6 adaptogens in the formula. They are among the most studied and most well known, and they are included in differing extracts. One of the main reasons Adaptable works the way it does is because they are not just simple powders, they're concentrated adaptogens, and they're concentrated differently, each one of them, according to the balance that we tried to achieve. So Eleuthero, Ashwagandha, Schisandra, Jiaogulan, Astragalus, and Rhodiola. Those are the 6. In addition, an herb that is not a traditional adaptogen but is very complementary and was very important in this formula for my wife and continues to be is St. John's wort. Why are adaptogens so amazing? I love this chart because it shows our sort of a baseline of performance that we need to be happy, healthy, have stamina, have energy. And it shows the difference between adaptogens and where many of us in society reach to try to get through a day or perform the way we want to perform in terms of physical energy, emotional, cognitive needs, to be able to live the life the busy lifestyle for many of us. And it's stimulants. It's using stimulants. So this is a graph from someone named Panosian, a researcher. And in this graph, he and his team show that adaptogens, what they do is build. They build balance and energy and strength. And then as the body uses the nutrients, then it comes back down. But you don't ever see this dip below the average or a healthy level. Whereas stimulants spike us upward, and then afterwards we're going to have to go through a period of below average capability, is the way I would put it, both physically and mentally, and hence the need to keep re-stimulating. Adaptogens miss that whole roller coaster. What else makes adaptogens so cool? They're safe for daily use. They produce a non-specific response to stress, which means that they work, as we would say, at the roots, and a much wider variety, in my opinion, all people can feel a difference with daily use, regardless of their particular or our particular reason for taking the adaptogens. The reason for this is the third point on the slide. They have a normalizing influence, a balancing influence on both body and mind, irrespective of where we're feeling the lack, where we're feeling the need, what we're looking to fix or to change. Additionally, this same group of researchers about 22 years ago provided what they called a functional definition of adaptogens. They said they are a new class of herbs that are metabolic regulators, which increase the ability of an organism to adapt to environmental factors and avoid damage from such factors. So I know that's a little bit, a little scientific in the verbiage, but really they strengthen us as we confront the needs and the demands of our day, of our living, whether they are emotional or physical, and we're able to get through them without a lot of these imbalances, to put it that way, that lead to chronic situations and actually do and can bring damage. And so adaptogens are very protective. 10 years after this statement, these same researchers in 2010 said, in fact, this was a summary of clinical trials that they carried out. Adaptogens demonstrate anti-fatigue effects that increase our mental work capacity, even when we're already stressed out and tired. Even when we feel, to a degree, mental exhaustion, we tolerate it better. Enhanced attention and focus. Now that's just a brief summary of a number of trials. Then they added there are neuroprotective effects. So things that cause anxiety and depressive feelings are lessened, or rather the way we feel them are lessened because we have more strength, more adaptive strength. They also mention among the neuroprotective benefits that the adaptogens are nootropic, which means they enhance memory, learning, cognition. So adaptogens are pretty amazing. Here's a picture of the 6 that are in our formula.
Greg, before we go on to Adaptable, the formula, I want to talk a little bit about adaptogens themselves. They're a new class of herbs, they say. That in the 70s, the Russians coined that phrase.
Yeah, or was it 70s, 50s, somewhere in there, a long time ago. Yeah.
Relatively recent
That's true.
in history, but herbs like Astragalus have been used in Chinese medicine for
Millennia.
ever. Yeah. And so who's determining now what they're classified as, and how does this classification help us? And how like St. John's wort, which has a lot of these properties, why is it not an adaptogen?
Well, that's a good question. I think that really what the Russian scientist, I think it was Vladimir Lazaret or something like that. He's the one that coined the term. And I really think in our literature, it's a new class to break it out and to call it something like that. In that sense, it's new, but they're not new. They've been used for millennia, and they have these properties which we could summarize, and we gave you a few summaries in the previous slides, but we could summarize them. I like to summarize them in the 5 fingers of my hand because I can remember that. Safe for daily use, stamina and energy, but not like a stimulant, where you don't have the dip afterward. That they're always immune enhancing. I say enhancing, that can be, a better word is modulating, because if it's weak, it strengthens the immune system, but where it's overactive, it's a modulator. And so and you'll see in some of the studies I'll highlight today, some of them are immune where it's attacking the body itself, mitigating that, so that's modulating it so that doesn't happen. So they are nutrition. They are not, I view them as foods, not medications, but their nutrients and their collection of nutrients are so complete and varied and balanced that the body's able to, in the way I view it, plug the holes, fill the needs that are getting in the way of it doing what it's made to do. And so that's the third thing, is that the immune aspect. And then I kind of alluded to the last two, a large array of active nutrients that are on either side of imbalance. So as an example, things that calm in an adaptogen, but others could use the adaptogen and gain energy because their stamina is improved, and yet without the jitter or the anxiousness that comes with it, because there are both calming and stimulating nutrients in that same plant or root or flower or whatever the part is that's used that's adaptogenic. And then the last point is that they do have a great influence over that connection between our physical situation and our mental outlook. That's sort of a layman's way. That's the way I would say it. So I know science would say it different, but adaptogens have all of those aspects to them. And so I think a new classification of herb means this is something we ought to study. They're worth a look because they do all these things. What changes when you use them, when you include those in your diet? What can change for you, and how might we improve our health by bringing those into the mix? And I think they're meant for daily use.
Yeah.
So that's my, I don't know if that answered the question.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, let's look at a few of them then. So we've got these 6, very colorful, as you can see. In other words, quite an array of adaptogens with different properties. Let's start with the one my favorite, and I will tell you, to me, it's kind of the king to me, and that's Eleuthero, or what we used to call for many years Siberian ginseng. These are little bullet points from studies. So just a little bit of a review over many, many studies, a lot of this from training that Dr. Allison put together. And so you're just seeing the tip of the iceberg, but what we see tonight is impressive. All of this is generated from trials and studies. So you can see increased stamina in the face of increased stress. So even stamina under duress, you could put it that way. Lots of improved resistance to illness and to injury, etc. There's a big reputation with Eleuthero in the studies in just resilience. In 1593, so what are we looking at here? Something like, we're getting close to 500 years ago. Li Shichen, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, in his writings in China said that long-term use makes one feel happy and vigorous. Happy and vigorous. It decreases reactive anxiety. Here's the quote from Li Shichen. Quote, "I would rather take a handful of Eleuthero than a cartload of gold and jewels." So just marinate that, sit on that for a minute. I'd rather take a handful of Eleuthero than a cartload of gold and jewels. It is very, very far-reaching in its benefits for health because it works at a deeper level, and we would call it the roots level in body processes. So when you look at different studies looking at more detail, you can see benefits to the heart and circulation, benefits to the immune system, reducing the incidences of cold and flus when there's regular use, increased endurance, faster recovery times, improved sleep quality and less nighttime wakenings. Those are all just different aspects of Eleuthero with regular use. Now the next one's Schisandra. Studies showing anti-inflammatory and anti-asthmatic properties, liver protection, and a very interesting what they call a dual effect in the third point on this slide. It helps stimulate mental activity and performance and is calming, helps relieve palpitations, stress-induced asthma. This to me really illustrates the concept of an adaptogen because they are constructed such that you feel when you take them that kind of balance and a lessening and a strength against anxiety and those sorts of feelings. And in turn, you also feel increased energy. And in our society, with so many of the products we use, it doesn't come that way. Generally, you're taking, if someone's going to drink a cup of coffee or a Red Bull or something that's, that's highly stimulating, they know they're going to get a few things with it. And those things aren't calming and this relaxed feeling along with my energy. So Schisandra, a great example. In fact, some people describe Schisandra as emotional peace. And that comes from, in traditional Chinese medicine, it was used as a sedative and a hypnotic or sleep-inducing herb. There are studies that have shown that stress-based anxiety is improved with daily use of Schisandra, and less cortisol is floating around in the body. In 2006, there was a study that showed that at the cellular level, there is protection, enhanced what they called mitochondrial antioxidant status, protection against environmental, emotional, and chemical stressors. Being able to track that at the cellular level. In 2008, there's a review of numerous clinical trials that show psychiatric benefits, depression lessened, addiction, in particular alcoholism was cited. Help with that by adding in this adaptogen Schisandra in the diet. And in 1999, a study of athletes, better performance and more protective effects during strenuous exercise. So sometimes we get caught up in the physical exercise or physical activity, but I personally believe that the emotional demands of today's day and age are strenuous. And the same principles apply with adaptogens, which is really what is the tell on whether an herb is really truly an adaptogen. You have both of those aspects going. Now, the next one is Astragalus. Here are a couple of highlights from that. Again, known for its enhancement of immune function, but also improved blood flow in these studies, preventing kidney and liver damage. An interesting one with Astragalus, reduced side effects from chemo. So people that were choosing that form of therapy, fewer side effects when they were eating Astragalus. Some blood sugar regulation support, and antibacterial, antiviral, and anti-inflammatory activity shown as well in Astragalus. In 1998, there was a study, and I think it was related to asthma, showing inflammatory markers go down with the use of Astragalus, reduced airway reactivity. And in 2005, a study showing improved kidney function for people with type 2 diabetes. Another study in 2010, 5 years later, people with seasonal allergies And I will tell you, this is one of the early benefits that one of my early stories with adaptogens had to do with that, because that was always a huge issue for me my whole life. And I wondered why it was lessening and lessening. Once in a while, I'd feel it, but it was continuous for me through seasonal allergy, and not so now, much more infrequent. But then again, this is something that I've been using daily for some time. The next one is Jiaogulan. This one's not as well known. A lot of times we'll mention it, or people will read it on the label like, what's that? They've heard of some of these others, but not Jiaogulan. Again, a wonderful immune enhancing herb, one that helps with blood pressure and heart health. And in particular, there was a study with liver problems, fatty liver. That's one that's, I think you're going to hear more and more about in the next several years, because it used to be pretty much associated with alcoholism, and now you're finding it very pervasive in many people who aren't drinking any alcohol. And so all of a sudden now there are studies, you see more studies about it. And here's one where they had people do diet, improve their diet, exercise, and take Jiaogulan. 4 months of doing this. And what did they do? Well, and they measured significant improvements compared to a fake pill, a placebo. Their body mass index improved, fatty liver score went down, insulin resistance went down, lower triglycerides, the worrisome enzymes, liver enzymes, all improved, went down with the use of Jiaogulan. So Jiaogulan is about strengthening you. There's evidence that is a heart strengthener, creating a stronger, more powerful heartbeat. That's a summary from a study. And they're wondering because they're seeing a lower heart rate. So in other words, where it's accelerated with so much, stress does that. A lot of chemical compounds do that. With Jiaogulan, they saw improvement. In fact, a study in 1993, so this one's now 30 years old. There were 220 people, and 100% of them, 100% of these 220 participants showed positive effects only 30 minutes after their initial dose of this, which is pretty amazing to me. What they found was the blood pumped more easily, the heart rate didn't go up, or blood pressure with better flow, more oxygen to the muscles. So this was a study, I think they were really looking at physical performance and energy with it. So there you go, Jiaogulan. Ashwagandha is the next one. This one's more famous. You hear a lot more about it. Generally a calming adaptogen, and does a lot with balancing the glandular system, hence hormones. There are some studies where they worked with Alzheimer's, and the studies in these studies with ashwagandha reversing behavioral deficits, they said. It definitely helped pain tolerance and lowering pain levels without damage. A lot of people will describe ashwagandha as a way to a calmer brain, because lowering anxiety and depression are also two other of its attributes. There are studies with insomnia, improving that. Also, stress-induced depression, studies with that with ashwagandha. More studies about reduced anxiety in people with chronic stress. And here, there's a second study. You can see the second study on this slide about a group with ashwagandha versus a group that had, again, a sugar pill, a fake pill. And all of the measures that they used in this study that were different ways we tend to rate our stress level, or we can measure our stress level in just 2 months. So the study was over 2 months. This is in 2012. All of the scores went down. In fact, here's a couple highlights for you from these studies. And again, this is from a training that Dr. Allison gave us. So this is the measure on the left. Ashwagandha on the right is what the people felt who got the fake pill, the placebo. Notice the difference in the numbers. If you look down the right, perceived stress, somatic anxiety, social dysfunction, severe depression. I mean, these are some very serious categories. The change was next to nothing with the fake pill, but the change was huge with ashwagandha. 40, 70, 68%, 79% where the measures decline. These measures of stress that are at high levels go down by half or 3/4 of the measuring, which to me is significant. Here's another group, just overall depression, anxiety, stress, how much cortisol is in the system. Look at all of these, how much they decline with ashwagandha versus someone who's not taking it. So again, I would emphasize, in my opinion, and in our experience at Solle, these are about daily nutritional choices and having them in the system. I know these studies look quite, they're quite clinical, and people tend to look at them like a medication. If we treat them like a medication, we will get a tenth of the benefit that we would get if we treat them like food and nutrition. We tend to, at Solle, we gravitate toward whole plant extracts, whole root, the part of the plant that's the beneficial, concentrating all of it, getting the entire balance of nature as best we can, so that all those components are available, because in our opinion, it's not always clear which one is the reason. Now, the last of the adaptogens is Rhodiola. In the Russian pharmacopoeia, it's listed as an antidepressant. It's also written and listed for fatigue reducing and energy in physical or athletic performance. It enhances alertness, improves memory, and strengthens the immune system. There's an interesting study published in 2014. This is, again, from training Dr. Allison gave us, on how Rhodiola has this downstream effect on genes. Over 1,000 different genes were affected in a good way. Communication between immune cells, cell signaling, decreases in emotional and aggressive behavior are just 3 of these impacts. And then in the analysis, they showed the most significant impacts for the heart, for your digestion, for, once again, the endocrine or glandular system, and all this hormonal balance that we've been talking about. Metabolic benefits, neurological benefits, behavioral and psychological disorders, 2 different categories that I'm sure Dr. Allison could enlighten us on. All of these were benefited over time with Rhodiola. So Rhodiola is an amazing adaptogen. It is, as we see on this next slide, neuroprotective, heart protective, all the things that we just mentioned. It's including stimulating activity in the central nervous system. All of these things. This is published in Phytomedicine Journal back in 2010. There have been many studies since then. It's quite studied, this herb. So that does it for the adaptogens in the formula. But I mentioned that there's an important herb that is not, though it has some adaptogenic properties, it's not a full adaptogen. The difference being you got to have all the properties to be a full adaptogen, and many plants have some of them. And a lot of the some of them plants really play well with adaptogens. So you'll see in Solle formulas, we blend them all, but there's always that adaptogenic base. So St. John's wort is one of those, native to Europe, traditionally used in a sedative role, also for pain relief, including rheumatic pain, also in menopause, induced irritation and anxiety, so those emotional challenges that come with that, which, by the way, are not a defect in any of the women that feel that. They rather are a reflection of what's going on in terms of our nutritional makeup and the balance in the vital processes of the body, where we have needs that are not being met by what I would call the fuel that our body needs to produce the wonderful results that it does in all its function. The nutrients being the fuel. So St. John's wort, in addition to helping with all this, speeds healing of wounds, bruises, sunburn. In fact, it's in our Solle Flex AC cream for this reason. It's effective with nerve pain and nerve damage. Some of the studies show carpal tunnel, phantom limb pain, TMJ. These are, again, from Dr. Allison training, and helpful in seasonal affective disorder, which is, we're in the middle of that this time of year. So St. John's wort has really a rich history. And there was a large review in 2009. One of my favorites to quote from Dr. Allison. This is not a review she did, but this is something that she shared with us and taught. Over 5,400 patients, combining all sorts of studies together, and what they found is that St. John's wort was superior to a fake pill in patients with major depression. Now, I think my wife could echo that, because that was her experience. It was similarly effective as standard antidepressants. Again, my wife would echo that. but St. John's wort, look at letter C on this slide, has far fewer side effects. So not an adaptogen, but still a very important herb that compares very well to the challenges that many people face. Now, the part I want to end with tonight, I know I've said a lot, but the part I want to end with is that it's not just about those nutrients working in the brain or working with the hormones and balancing what we're talking about here, stress and mood. St. John's wort actually helps the gut. And this was something from a training in Dr. Allison. Stomach, your intestines, your gallbladder, your liver. In fact, these bitters and astringents in St. John's wort actually help your gut tissue, help with diarrhea, and help what's called the enteric nervous system. The enteric nervous system is a layer of over 100 million nerve cells that line your GI tract. From the top to the bottom, major help for your gut. Well, this system actually is responsible for 90% of the information that flows between your head and your gut. 90% of it actually comes from the enteric nervous system up to the brain, not the other way around. It's bottom up. So it is not any surprise to me that something that makes a big deal in helping mood regulation has to be doing something down here in the gut and specifically with your enteric nervous system. So your everyday emotional well-being, says Dr. Allison, may rely on your gut to brain messages. Well, this comes from an article in Scientific American that she was quoting. So St. John's wort, part of the reason that it works so well is it helps the enteric brain. There are over 30 different kinds of neurotransmitters that it uses. And almost all, 95% of the serotonin in the body is found in the gut. Interesting fact when you look at the balance of these important chemicals in our mood and well-being. So depression, says Dr. Allison, and these articles, is the whole body. It's not just, I've taken this to balance my head. These things balance because they work in all the body. They balance the emotions and mood, inflammation, gut, liver, all these things affect our brain functioning. So my final statement for Adaptable tonight would be from Dr. Allison: your body can heal if you give it what it needs. First, find hope. There's plenty of hope. Part of the reason we founded Solle is to have lots of people here who are really good at giving each other hope. Find that to boost your energy and nutrition with Adaptable. And 3, start making lifestyle choices, changes if necessary that are affecting how we feel, our stress levels, etc. Do that part as well. And that's why Adaptable was formulated to be an aid in this process.
Yeah. So we can see here that it works. So Adaptable works. And, it's one of our top selling products, and it's clear to see why with all the things that it does. But could you maybe wrap it all up and tell us why does Solle Adaptable work?
Well, Adaptable works because it has a wide enough variety of adaptogens that are concentrated enough, and they each have different things that they do in the body, so that with that group together, it's concentrated high enough and gives you enough variety that it is able to fill gaps that your body needs, well, based on lack of nutrition from what we eat, and also based on what is created in us because of our reaction to stress and how we create those gaps. It can cover that. And I would say, secondly, because of the quality control that is in place, maintaining consistency in the material, and you alluded to that with Blake, that can vary from these plants. You can buy cheap powders, or you can spend the money and get the extracts as best we can do them in our, according to our knowledge, in society today. And with those factors together, Adaptable really can be something that I think personally every household having it there can make a big difference.
That's great. Thank you, Greg, for sharing your thoughts with us today. I've learned so much today, and I hope everybody has too. Excuse me. But now we have a guest that is coming to us from Frisco, Texas. And his name is Dr. Hugh Jenkins, and we are blessed to have him on our show today to tell us his story of success with AdaptAble. Hugh, how are you today? Hugh, we can't hear you. Have you muted your sound?
Can you hear me now?
Oh, we can hear you now.
Okay. All right. So I guess I got to start from the beginning. I'm so happy and grateful that have such peace and love in my heart. And I have to contribute it to Solle, but specifically AdaptAble, because I've had so much anxiety, chronic anxiety, that it created insomnia. And I would call it anxiety insomnia, AI, to the point that the insomnia was so much that I would have broken sleep. I would get up in the middle of the night. I would not be able to go to sleep. So I started taking 4 adaptables two to 3 times a day. Now, being a naturopathic doctor and a retired chiropractor, I know that I can give myself a therapeutic dose. So if I need 2 times a day or 3 times a day, I can do it for myself. Okay. And it gave me so much wonderful sleep, top quality sleep, that my AI, anxiety, insomnia is gone away, even under heavy duty stress. But it's constantly, you have to take it, and the adaptogens help to balance off that. When we're under heavy duty stress, it'll help to bring it down to normal, that the body mind connection gets balanced. So that's my loving testimony for AdaptAble. If you're under any kind of stress, especially the chronic stress that we have in life, we need to do that. And our children, they're under that, and seeing that it's plant-based, we need to add that plant-based diet to it. So yes, I really enjoy it.
I'm so glad you've had success with it. And I know you've been taking it for a long time. You've been with us for a long time. And I'm so glad that you are having success with that. Thank you for sharing your story with us today. And I'm going to send you a bottle for our Soul Naturals branded water bottle to say thank you for taking the time out of your day and sharing with us. Thank you, Hugh. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Now, we have a special running right now. If you buy one longevity, you get the second one at half price. All you do is you put 2 bottles of longevity in your cart, along with anything else you want in there, and put in the box the code LIVELONG, and it'll take 50% off your second bottle, and you can enjoy that savings and enjoy the longevity benefits as well. Our next episode of Why Soul Works will be on March 21st, and we will be talking about Soul Renew. Greg will join us again and talk adaptogens and Soul Renew. And if you have a story, a success story with Soul Renew, please email me at Kendall Bird at Soul Naturals, or Kendall at soulnaturals.com. And let me know that you would love to share your story with us. And I will appreciate that and get you on our show. Thank you, Hugh, for doing that. And thank you, Greg, for sharing your thoughts with us. And I look forward to seeing you next time on Why Soul Works.